giving.
So that was one, and there's another one that was also singular.
Yes, and this one is in the Mystic Heart, 199 to 200, under a section called The Experience of Totality. Mm-hmm. And this really gave me an experience that went back before creation. They were always talking about the Big Bang and trying to figure out how this. Right. Well, I got way beyond that, and it just happened that, you know, I was, of course, one has to predispose oneself for these things, and of course, I was seeking illumination. I was seeking the divine, and had a very intense prayer life in school and things like that, and very philosophical life and social life also. And what happened was, one evening, I was sitting in my room, and everything started to dissolve. Mm. Everything dissolved. And I was no longer in the world, and I found myself in this infinite expanse of light with no structure, no form, no colors, no shapes, just this kind of act of identity that I was united with. I was not aware of myself at all. I was only aware of this. I call it an act of identity. The primordial, it took me a long time to understand this, the primordial act of identity of the Godhead. Mm-hmm. How God is God. Mm-hmm. The simplicity of an act of self-relation. Mm-hmm. And that what I saw is the divine is a community of consciousness. And that it's utterly, utterly simple. So simple you can't get a hold of it. It's almost like Alan Watts's notion in the Joyce cosmology of the eeny-weeny principle. Yeah. Remember that?
I do.
It's something like that. And that what I perceive, if I can articulate it in a language that we can understand, is, and not realizing that this is inadequate to the reality of the divine, is that the act of identity was a proceeding from itself, into itself, and integrating itself. From itself, into itself, integrating itself.
Without ever really moving.
Without ever moving. So I call it an unmoving movement. Yeah. And from this went on for eternity. That's another thing I realize is that any experience of the ultimate happens in eternity. Mm-hmm. And the whole of eternity, though we may not comprehend it all. And therefore, this went on for eons, I would say, in eternity, though in time it might seem a few minutes or whatever. And then what happened is, remember, I'm a Christian, all of a sudden it summed itself up into an image. And it was the face of Christ, which I take to be the Logos, the divine mind. Yeah. And all of a sudden, exploding like a cornucopia, from this face came all the universes that will ever be, with trillions and trillions and octrillions of galaxies, solar systems and moons. I mean, I saw the totality, but I couldn't comprehend the detail. I saw the map of creation. And I saw everything happening, and then I saw our earth, and then I saw nature and trees, and I realized everything, absolutely everything has meaning and a place. Mm-hmm. And I realized this goes way beyond science.
It's the simplicities, I am that I am.
I am that I am.
But all of that occurs within, almost like a modification of this eternal I amness.
Right.
And that those modifications occur in time, that they spill over into time without ever leaving eternity.
Right, without ever leaving eternity. Yeah. And another thing I realized later, subsequent, just philosophical realization, is that one of the big limitations we have as knowers, epistemologically, is that we think successively because we have discrete moments of experience. But the divine sees everything as there, simultaneous, like Boethius says.
Subspecie.
Yeah, subspecie aeternitate. And I think when we see discrete moments of experience, we're not seeing the whole picture, of course.
And we think it's strung out in time, almost like causal relationships.
Right.
Alan Watts, since you mentioned him, had a really wonderful, very simple metaphor of this. He said it's like you're sitting on a fence, and there's a small, latch in the fence that's out, so there's a small gap in the fence you can look through.
Right.
And on the other side of a fence is a cat.
Yes.
And the cat's walking back and forth in front of the slot that you're looking through. And so all you see is like head, body, tail, head, body, tail. and you conclude the head causes the tail.
Right.
Because that's how you see it still
Yeah,
not linear time.
exactly.
It's just one simple isness itself. There's no before, after, in between cause or anything like that at all. So that's how eternity appears in time, is the head causes the tail.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I had a Jesuit professor when I was at Fordham, Norrie Clark. And Norris Clark's still alive. I think he's in his 80s. And he's a brilliant metaphysician. And he took a year off and went to India and Japan and basically went to argue with Buddhists. And,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
things like that.
Straighten them out.
Straighten them out. So he was in Japan and he was in Kyoto and he was passing down the street and he saw this beautiful garden, you know, and so he was so attracted to the beauty and structure, order, harmony of the garden. He went in and was just marveling at it. And this little Japanese fellow said, "You American, aren't you?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Come in, please." And then he says, the Japanese fellow, little sage, says to him, he says, "Have you noticed you cannot see whole garden from any one perspective?" And he says, "Yes." "Oh yeah, I noticed that." He said, "Lesson." Lesson. Just as you cannot see whole garden from any angle, cannot know all reality in one moment. So, lesson. So that relates to that's a good metaphor.
It's a good metaphor, but it's also in don't know mind.
Right.
In divine ignorance, you can be all of reality.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the mystic side of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those are two pretty good afternoons we got going so far.
Yeah, pretty good afternoon.
Yeah.